Will this prove to be the costly mistake for the Rams this season? We're talking about a position they moved on from and how it could affect their season, as well as the quarterback of the future and what week one of college football looked like for that future. All on today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua Giron. Remember, if you guys are not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor. Press that subscribe button now, as roughly 65% of you guys are watching the videos, but you're still not pressing that subscribe button. All I'm saying is if you're already watching, might as well press that subscribe button so you don't miss any daily Rams content here at the Rams Digest. First things first, we have quite a bit to talk about, so let's talk about this kind of interesting perspective. So not college QBs, I'm sorry, we'll talk about that in a second, but don't panic. Don't panic. Let's not panic on this situation. We are talking about the Rams moving on from Derion Kendrick and how it could be possibly a costly, maybe it gives them a small, maybe non-existent margin for error, expected to regret one roster move no matter what. This is what some of the analysts are saying, right? So no matter what happens for the Rams, they're going to regret moving on from Derion Kendrick is essentially what this article is talking about. The reason why they're bringing this front is because, or to the fourth front, is essentially pointing out the fact that the Rams have moved on from a guy who has a lot of starting ability, and they kind of waived him, kind of like in a similar situation with Puka Jr., right? We talked about, okay, maybe the Rams could move this guy onto the practice squad. Maybe that's their goal, and it probably was their goal, but ultimately this guy also got picked up by the Seattle Seahawks, of course, of all teams, right? The Los Angeles Rams cut Derion Kendrick on an 18-game starter, weakening the depth at a position with average starters. That's kind of true, right? If we're really being honest and breaking it down. The Rams don't have enough margin for error at cornerback to release a player with starting experience on the boundary. So kind of breaking this down a little bit more in depth here. So Kendrick, a 6th-round pick out of Georgia in 2022, logged 18 career starts in Los Angeles. He flashed in 2023 with 10 pass breakups and interception across 12 starts, but missed the entirety of 2024 with a torn ACL. Even so, the Seattle Seahawks quickly claimed him off of waivers, a move that added sting as the Rams lost 4 players to waivers, the most of any team, plus another to a practice squad elsewhere, Puka Jr., right? So ultimately, what are we talking about here? Well, the reality is the Rams, for whatever reason, because they want to keep X player or this player, they decided to do some interesting roster maneuvers in terms of releasing certain players, keeping certain players over guys we may have expected them to keep. And I think just kind of logically speaking, right, when we're talking about the linebacker position, for example, not to revisit this, but you move on from Puka Jr., who's a promising linebacker that you kind of want to keep on the roster because he was your 5th-round pick this year, regardless of maybe he had an attitude problem, which I don't think this is true, but maybe he had an attitude problem. Maybe he just wasn't good enough. Regardless of that, you just drafted him in the 5th round, so maybe you should keep that guy on the roster, give him some time to hopefully develop into a better player while you release a guy like Troy Reeder, for example. Yes, are you worried possibly someone takes Troy Reeder, a guy who's a leader for you in the linebacker room? Sure, maybe, but ultimately, special teams and leadership is cool, but you want guys who can play well at the linebacker position, right? So maybe move on from him. And I think just logically speaking, you had a higher % chance of getting him back, Troy Reeder, onto the practice squad or getting him back on the team somehow, some way after you buy yourself some more time to figure these things out, rather than lose Puka Jr., right, your 5th-round pick. So, but speaking of the waiver perspective, right? Derion Kendrick, for example, is an example of a player who maybe, okay, you let go of him, you wanted to get him back on the practice squad, he gets claimed off waivers, that's unfortunate, but you don't have that much depth at cornerback. Maybe you could have moved on from a tight end, right? Obviously, Davis Allen or Kobe Parkinson. Maybe you move on from one of those guys and hope that you have a better chance at getting one of those guys, or one of your offensive linemen. Whatever. Like, those are valuable positions as well, but the cornerback just seems like a spot that you have a very, like they said in the article, a thin chance at, what's the word? Thin opportunity in terms of margin for error, right, in that position. And that's why it's kind of important to keep a guy like Derion Kendrick, who's coming off an ACL tear, right? Even if he wasn't performing well in the preseason or during training camp, he's coming off a torn ACL, right? He's getting back into his form. The Rams secondary was far from elite last season, finishing 20th in pass defense. Darius Williams allowed 101.7 passer rating and coverage. Akilo Witherspoon checked in at 96.9, and Emmanuel Forbes arrived midseason after flaming out in Washington. Kendrick with the real boundary starting experience offered insurance at a position group already under the microscope. Cutting him created both a depth and optics issue to many fans and analysts. It signaled unnecessary risk, and that's a key note there. It feels like an unnecessary risk to take to move on from guys like Derion Kendrick when you need so much at that position. You want to have depth and ability at that position because you're not the strongest at that position, just like the linebacker room. It's like the same thing, right? The Rams aren't really acknowledging the fact that those are two weaker positions. Not that it's weak, these guys are incapable, but they're weaker positions on your roster, and it's kind of very intriguing to see them move on from guys at that position. Releasing any defensive back with starting experience is a disastrous move no matter what. This comes to us from an analyst here. So why the Rams aren't panicking, though, why I think you guys maybe shouldn't panic ultimately is inside the building, right? There's optimism around the cornerback room, and that's a positive. They trust and believe in these guys on the team right now. So head coach Sean McVay insists Rams actually like their current cornerback room. I really think our corner group as a whole is really deep. McVay said this week, we've got what we look at as 4 starting corners, like he talked about. We talked about this a couple days ago as well. Kobe Durant, Darius Williams, Emmanuel Forbes, and now, Akila Witherspoon as well, right? So those are 4 guys they see as capable starters. Kobe Durant showing progress. Reporters saw him break up a couple passes intended for Puka Nacua during camp. So all positive stuff within the building. But there is a little bit of kind of an unnerving kind of wrinkle to this as well. Seahawks claiming Derion Kendrick. He's going to stay in the NFC West. We're going to see him at the end of the day. If he becomes a good player, a player that the Rams could have used, we're going to have to see it against the Rams a couple of times a year. We're going to have to see him so close by, right, playing well, just like Cooper Kupp, right, as well. That's going to hurt for Seattle. Also, Paul Jr., if he becomes a good linebacker, it's going to hurt because Seattle has taken some of our players, right? So those are all kind of key factors here when we're talking about this. The biggest thing is it does feel like unnecessary risk at the cornerback room, at the linebacker room, positions that are very, very heavily positions of need for the Rams right now moving forward. That's kind of my perspective on it. How do you guys feel about the cornerback room? Are you confident? Are you okay moving on from Derion Kendrick? It kind of went quietly, swept under the rug, but this article kind of brought it back to my attention. Is this a mistake? You think the Rams would regret moving down the road? Not necessarily that Derion Kendrick's your savior, but he's your depth, right? He's a depth piece. Even if he's your 5th corner, you have a guy who's capable at that cornerback position. Maybe now you don't as much, or you're not as confident in that room as much. Let me know how you guys feel about that in the comment section down below. And then moving on from that, college quarterbacks, right? We're talking about the college quarterback perspective. Why? Because, first of all, week 1 of college football just happened. I personally am not the biggest college football fan. Let me know if you guys are feeling different about it in the comment section down below. It's not that I'm not a fan of the game. I love football no matter who's playing, no matter what time it's happening. I love watching football. But I just can't get into like the guys changing every single year. There's so many people on the roster. I can't follow one team. I didn't go to a college that has a major football program. So ultimately, it's just not something I'm super connected with. But you guys let me know how you guys feel about college football as week 1 just happened. And so the Rams, they got to look for their new quarterback of the future next year. Going to be a rookie, right? Who is this quarterback potentially going to be? And after week 1, we had a couple guys who impressed already. We're going to go over 3 names, I think, as well as one major interesting name, a 4th interesting name that kind of maybe didn't play so well. We'll talk about that in a second. Not really anything too crazy to break down, but just kind of want to hear an analyst speak on who the top players to look out for this college season are going to be. So one, Garrett Nussmeier of LSU. I like the way he looked personally, just watching him throw the football. Obviously, LSU uniform reminds me of Joe Burrow, but definitely looks like a solid, confident, poised quarterback. Nussmeier looked very poised in the pocket, displayed its good touch and accuracy against a good Clemson defense. One of his better throws came just outside the red zone on the move. The LSU quarterback threw an accurate ball across his body to find an open receiver. He had another ball along the sideline that was perfectly placed in the bucket for his wide receiver to haul it in. So overall, Nussmeier's pocket movement and ability to keep his eyes down the field really stood out against a Clemson defensive line that was finding success. Nussmeier, clinical, 28 for 38, 230 yards, and a touchdown. And most importantly, didn't make a mistake to cost his team in what was a defensive battle. One of the quarterbacks who played over the weekend, Nussmeier, was one that looked the most pro-ready. Again, coming to us from one analyst's perspective, but ultimately very intriguing to see right now. LSU games. If you guys are hanging out at home on a Saturday, you're not necessarily into college football, but LSU is on. stay, watch the game. Let's see what Garrett Nussmeier looks like. Let's see if that could be a potential future quarterback for the Rams to look into. Another quarterback I think that also played well, according to this article, Carson Beck as well. So both of these quarterbacks getting an 8 out of 10 rating. Carson Beck going to Miami. A little bit of controversy off the field, I feel like, with his transfer stuff and kind of being a star on social media. I've seen stuff like that. Maybe I'm completely wrong on it. Let me know how you guys feel about Carson Beck if you know more about college football than I do. But Beck stood tall in the pocket, was calm, cool, and collected the entire night. Instead of receivers that dropped passes last year at Georgia, he had receivers making incredible catches. Beck displayed NFL-level processing and good pocket presence. These are all positive things we like to hear about these quarterbacks. Again, sitting at home on Saturday, watching college football, Miami's playing. Let's see what Carson Beck's looking like next week in whatever matchup they are playing against. Just some guys to keep an eye on as the season progresses in college football. One other name too, 7.5 out of 10 rating here for their performance. Drew Aller from Penn State, 22 for 26, 217 passing yards and a touchdown. Same thing, probably looking pretty confident, cool, calm, and collected, looking like some nice post-snap processing, pocket movement, things like that. Those are all positives for sure you want to see from a college quarterback. So very early in the college season, don't want to give too much, go too hard into what they look like week one, but these are some names to kind of keep an eye on and look at for the Rams to potentially be drafting next year. We could be looking at the future Rams starting quarterback right now in college football, right? Matthew Stafford, Arch Manning locking in late in the fourth quarter. This was one tweet I saw from Blaine Grisak talking about Arch Manning. Kind of funny to kind of connect it with Matthew Stafford. He had a nice touchdown throw, it looked like, late in the fourth quarter of a game versus Ohio State, I believe Texas played. But overall, they lost. A lot of social media talk, making fun of Arch Manning, saying he didn't look too great. So, hey, look, as much as I'm hoping the kid does play well for his own right, fixes some mechanics, people are saying doesn't look too great. Overall, I'm hoping he's okay mentally and kind of can power through that. One, it'll speak volumes about him if he can improve throughout the season. But two, even if he's not playing too well, I don't think Rams fans should be too worried about it. I'm still very interested in getting a guy with the last name Manning to potentially be your future quarterback. If he declares to the draft and he's a late first-round pick and the Rams have that, cool. Less investment there when you're talking about trying to get a player at the quarterback position. So, I'm not saying I'm rooting for him to play bad, but I'm saying it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world. Let's wait and see how this season progresses. Still a lot of time for this guy to develop and see what he looks like as the season goes on. Moving on from that, last but not least, trivia of the day. My favorite part of the episode. I ask a trivia question. You give your trivia guesses down below in the comment section. Whether you're right or whether you're wrong, we give you a shout out on the next episode that I'm on here at the Rams Digest. For those who missed last episode's trivia of the day, this was a question we asked everyone. We said, who was the first player to score a touchdown in Super Bowl history? We had some multiple choice options for those who played along. The multiple choice options for that guess were, was it A, Bart Starr? Was it B, Max McGee? Was it C, Paul Hornung? Or D, Jim Taylor? Who was the first player ever to score a touchdown in a Super Bowl, in Super Bowl history? Emphasize Super Bowl history because there's other championship games that have been played before the Super Bowl era. Multiple people played along with the trivia of the day. If you want to shout out just like these folks get on every episode, go ahead and play along with today's trivia of the day in just a couple minutes. But these shout outs from last episode's trivia of the day, we had the real J. Will saying Paul Hornung. We had Thomas saying Rich Eisen's definitely one of the analysts I find trustworthy. Jerseys are fire, really like them. Not a fan of Arizona's jersey. Shout out to you, Thomas, for responding to everything I talked about in that video. Trivia question, Bart Starr. We had Mo saying Max McGee is the answer. We had T1 saying Max McGee. We had John Reeves saying Bart Starr. We had Richard saying Paul Hornung, I think is what he meant. And then we had Floyd saying Jim Taylor with a shrug emoji because he has no idea what that guess is for this one. Shout out to all of you guys who play along with the trivia of the day. I always appreciate you guys for playing along. But the correct answer for last episode's trivia of the day was B, Max McGee with the Packers. He's a receiver. He obviously scored a touchdown in Super Bowl I. So, shout out to everyone who played along with trivia of the day. Always appreciate all of you guys. The ones who got it correct, though, shout out to Mo, shout out to T1, and that's pretty much it. Shout out to Mo and T1. Shout out to everybody again who played, but all of you two who got it correct, appreciate you guys for getting it correct as well. If you thought this was easy and you want to play along with today's episode, you want to get a shout out just like these folks in the next episode that I'm on here at the Rams Digest, play along with today's episode of Trivia of the Day. Here is the question for today's episode. What NFL team was originally called the Decatur Staleys? Decatur Staleys? I will say this. Here's a hint. Don't Google it. But if you know the city and you know what state it's in, it might be a little bit easier to guess this trivia question. What NFL team was originally called the Decatur Staleys? Was it A, the Detroit Lions? Was it B, the Minnesota Vikings? Was it C, the Green Bay Packers? Or was it D, the Chicago Bears? What team was originally called the Decatur Staleys? Was it A, the Detroit Lions, B, the Minnesota Vikings, C, the Green Bay Packers, or D, the Chicago Bears? Give your guesses down below in the comment section. Whether you're right, whether you're wrong, we give you a shout out on the next episode that I'm on here at the Rams Digest. Other than that, that's going to do it for me on today's episode. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing before you go. Other than that, that's going to do it for me. I'm your host, Joshua Giron, and I'm out.